Good evening. Back with a little bit of Flames Unfiltered. I'm host of the show, Brad Burud, joined alongside Kyle Lewis is joining me. He joins me every week. It's the same two every single week. Talking Flames hockey.
Yep, here we are yet again to discuss more mediocrity, as it were.
God, I get so many ups and downs, and it's just
Well, the first period in the Devils game was a major up. That might have been the best first period they played all year.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a letdown afterwards. It comes down to the same thing, right? Like just the big guys not being on the board at all.
It is. Quick turnaround on the show this week. We just got done with one a few days ago. We're doing one a little bit earlier than we usually do. Just I am heading to Florida on a vacation, much needed Florida family vacation. And so I'm looking forward to that this week. And so we're going to be, a little bit of a break here, but we will be back before Christmas. So
give the Flames a chance to give us lots to talk about, right?
There's a few games between now and then. So, and some tough ones too.
Oh, yes, very much so. Well, we talked about the schedule before. It's pretty well tough the rest of the season.
Hey, what the hell's going on with these Blasty jerseys? Are we wearing these every day now, or what's going on? I'm getting sick of this.
I'm a fan of them, but I'm not really a fan of like putting so many of those games together. I mean,
it's 3 in a row now, 4 in a row.
It's 3 for sure. It might be 4.
Yeah,
but it's been a lot lately, and it's a little different because we're kind of back to like a normal-ish jersey program. Like you got your home and your away and your alternate. There's no reverse retros this year. So I think it's like the best of all worlds the way the jerseys are currently laid out. But it is a little – people used to think, oh, like that's a jersey they win in. Well, obviously that hasn't been the case.
Yeah,
it's a jersey that Dube is really good in. Well, that's no longer the case.
Well, I don't know what jersey we could put on him right now and have him be good.
Anybody else's, and I'd be happy.
I hate day games. The New Jersey game frustrated the hell out of me. I hate day games to start with. Then we get off to a good start. We get a lead. Which is what is that? The first lead we've had in 8. The first time we had a first goal in 8 games prior to that. That's not good. That's a bad stat. That's a real bad.
That's a terrible stat. And I mean, all this talk about all the comeback wins, which of course they fell short in the Jersey game, but all the talk about the comeback wins, it's like that's not a good habit to be in. It's really not. And I mean, Coleman and Anderson both kind of said that after they beat Carolina, but yeah, they gotta start scoring first. But they're not going to do it that often if the guys are just supposed to be scoring continue to not score.
It's a giant problem.
Yeah,
it is a giant problem. There is so much underachieving going on. It's not even funny.
Well, we talked about this last time about how unbelievably low scoring our top scorer is going to be. You can't win like that. And I don't know what's going to take to change it. I mean, I'm all for what they've been doing in terms of, they got Coronato back in the lineup. And, Pelche should be back soon, but I think it's time to cut bait with guys like Dube, Mangiapane.
You want to see some crazy stats? We're going to get right to it. I subscribe to The Athletic, and I was going through, and they have these things called player cards.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pull them up, and they update every couple days or so. And there's a stat on there, and let me pull a couple of these up here. Let me add Huberdeau's to the screen. And let me switch our layout there so we can read it. Okay. So this is interesting. The bottom left corner here, it shows market value and salary.
Yeah.
So it shows his salary is 10.5, and his market value where he's playing, his statistics have him at a $5.1 million player. Yeah. So we're negative 5.4 on him. So you switch over to Lindholm, who's having a glorious season, and his salary right now is 4.9. It shows him, and this is surprising to me, it shows him where his market value is 7.1.
Yeah, that is surprising.
And it shows his offensive rating in the 78th percentile. I don't understand how they're determining that.
Ice time or role in the team must be some kind of a factor.
And then you switch to the guy that has been who we talk about the most lately.
Market value $800,000.
That is the
Wow.
value of Dillon Dube.
He looks like Penn Badgley from that super creepy show You on Netflix.
Oh, he does. He does.
Yeah. And I love that show.
I do. I watched the first 2 seasons of it. I have heard season 3 is bad, so I haven't started it.
It's not bad. It just doesn't compare to the first 2. It's certainly worth watching. But oh my man, those stats are even worse than I thought. And like, I don't know. I'm so over this experiment. I don't know what he has in the coaching staff, what kind of compromising photos he's managed to collect. Like, I don't get it, but this has got to stop.
But he never leaves the lineup. And only this week was the first time we've seen him have reduced ice time, where what night was it? The Carolina game, he played 5:47.
And he should have been scratched against Jersey. The message needs to be sent, and not just in terms of the game where it's reduced ice time. He's been horrific.
I look at now, the flu's going through the team.
Yeah.
And with guys out and Peltier coming back, sounds like early January, Coronato called up. I mean, do you want Coronato in the lineup or Dube? It's almost down to a decision such as that.
And I don't think anybody is going to argue against Coronato being in the lineup. Even what little he did against the Devils is far more than Dube did.
He was almost a ghost in that game, in my mind. I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I mean, we got a long ways before I start making opinions on Dillon Dube.
Yeah.
Or not Dillon Dube, Coronato, sorry.
Oh, Coronato, yeah. Yeah.
I have my opinions on Dube.
Yeah.
I don't know where we go with Dube. I can't. We have to move him. We have to figure out a way to bundle him to move so that, I mean, he just doesn't fit in our lineup right now
at all, anywhere in the lineup.
Like, and what's scary is we're a mediocre. I look at our lineup and it's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I just don't know where it's going to go from there. So Matthew Coronato is recalled. Dewar and Pospisil were out yesterday with the flu. What is your thoughts on Coronato being recalled?
Well, he's been tearing apart the AHL. Like, he deserved a recall under any circumstance. Just these ones played. Yeah, these ones played right into the decision. So it's a no-brainer. I'd like to see more of, what we saw in his first NHL goal against Pittsburgh when he just ripped that puck, But I mean, it takes time with a young player. I mean, it's going to take some time for him to find his way. But much like we've said about Dustin Wolf, I don't think Coronato has anything more to prove at the AHL level. Not that he's had to be there much, but guys like Dube are exactly what's in the way of guys like Coronato getting a regular opportunity, and I think he deserves it. So,
I do too. I'm interested to see how it play. How an extended stay on a same line would affect this. I really have a hard time right now breaking up the Kadri Zary Pospisil line. That line has been probably the most energizing line on the team. But
it would be fun to have Coronato with Pospisil and Kadri as well. There's some different things I wouldn't break it up either. I agree with you, but there's different things you could do with those players in the lineup that you can't do with a guy like Dube, and they're just taking up space.
Yeah,
which has been the case far too often. I mean, at this point, honestly, unless there's a late round pick to be had for him, just waive him. I don't really know what redeeming
He'd clear waivers.
I would expect so, unless somebody sees him as a reclamation project, much like the Flames did with Curtis Lazar years ago, right? High draft pedigree, World Junior pedigree, resume, whatever. Actually, there's a fair amount of parallels there, and the more I think about it, although Lazar has carved out a role as a fairly, useful NHLer, Dube has yet to do that, and doesn't look like he will, at least in Calgary.
You know what's scary when I look at our offense? I guess I would say I'm happy with Jarengovich's play. Are you not?
Yeah, and a beautiful goal in tight on that break.
He was
to corral that puck and make that move. He's everything I hoped he would be in that for coming over in that trade, and I think there's potential for more with him. Certainly looks that way.
But here's the scary part. Lindholm underachieving, Majapani underachieving, Huberdeau underachieving. Backlund, I would say, is fine. Coleman is fine. Zari's fine. Kadri's fine. Coronato yet to be determined. AJ Greer's probably fine. Adam Rosiska, I would say, is still underachieving. I know you might argue with me on that one.
No, not necessarily. I haven't seen much of him lately. I would actually say that Coleman has been probably our best forward.
He has.
And then Backlund's right behind him, although Zari
Kadri's been really good lately.
Yeah, Zari and Greer have both been great this year. There was actually Flames Nation had an article about AJ Greer being arguably the best Flames waiver pickup in a very long time. There's not much argument to be made against it, quite frankly.
No, I agree.
Not since the 05 lockout.
Yeah. We've had too many guys that are passengers this year, and we have too many dollars being spent on guys that aren't producing, even to mediocre standards, I guess you'd say.
Well, and that's why it becomes even more important to move at the salary you can move, like the Zadorov trade, having to move on from Tanev and Lindholm, these other guys. I mean, you have so much money on the books with guys that you're married to. You got to tweak around the roster to find space to get these young guys into the lineup and move forward.
But if the guys we're married to can't put up adequate points, we're in big trouble.
We are in big trouble. We're currently in big trouble because of that. This team right now is once again one game below 500 or two. I can't even keep track of it.
Two, I think now.
Yeah, like every time they get near 500, they start losing again, and it's absolutely infuriating. Like they've lost so much ground this season, and they can't build any momentum at all. So
think about how good this team could be if Huberdeau was playing at his standard, Lindholm was at his standard.
Even if they were, 3/4 as good as they should be. If Huberdeau was a 70-point player, this is a different conversation, but he's not.
No, he's not even. Is he on pace for 50?
Well, according to that scorecard, it was 48 or 49. Like he's
back up.
Oh,
yeah.
It's just
it's awful. It's awful, and yeah. I don't know if it changes. I don't know if it changes. I got a feeling we're going to be talking about this same thing come March. I don't know.
Well, when Pelche coming back may help him a bit, but I mean, at this point you almost have to bench him. Like you're not helping the team at all.
But Pelche is not an offensive driver.
Oh well, he drives play in the right direction, which might be enough to help. And like I say, nobody, unless it's Connor McDavid, is really going to snap Huberdeau out of this other than himself. But I mean, it's just excuse after excuse after excuse after I know I can be better. I know I have to. Like he's been saying the right things for months, but it's like, man, we need results and we need them now.
Like
this team has money tied up.
And I think he's, to me, from what I've seen, he's the type of player, though, that is just, this is eating him as much as it is us.
Oh, absolutely. But again, it's got to change.
I know.
You don't score 115 points in the NHL by chance. And even though it's on a different team, like you don't drop the way that he did. It makes no sense. Like he's got to get his game together. Maybe he needs to do what Iginla did years ago when he was getting on in his career. Then one year, I remember in the offseason, he shed like 12 pounds and was way quicker. Like maybe Huberdeau's got to change some of his training regimen. I don't know what he has to do, but like this is not acceptable and it's terrible.
It's terrible. That's where we're at. It's terrible.
Yep. I've been thinking more and more, especially with Wolf being up and playing quite well in both of his starts. I think it's now that the Leafs are down a goaltender, start talking to them about maybe a Markstrom and Tanev trade.
Yeah.
Obviously, some salary retention have to be involved with that. Yeah, I think you just have to look at the trade scenario with both those guys, because the reality is the team's not good enough to keep hanging on to an asset like Markstrom if there's a market to trade him. Obviously, some salary retention is involved in that, but
we also have to look at Markstrom holds the key there too, because he has
he's getting older and he's not going to win as a Calgary Flame. We know that for a fact at this point. And again, that's barring like a miracle, like was it 18-19? I think the Flames had a 10-game winning streak. Like they have to go on an absolute tear, and this roster has not shown they're capable of it at all.
No,
like at all. So, yeah.
So Markstrom goes on to IR. Wolf gets called up. Wolf's started 2 games in a row now.
How do you not love his gear setup with the Blasty jersey, though? Even as a non-Blasty fan such as yourself, that gear setup is wicked. That helmet, the pads.
He looks good. I love watching. I mean, he's entertaining to watch. Like I love it. I cheer for that. I cheer for him.
His lateral movement is just phenomenal.
But I laugh so hard at Twitter though. Like Vladar will be playing, and or Markstrom for that matter, and 2 pucks will get tipped by him, and they'll be like, "You got to have those." You got to have those. And then Wolf has 2 of them tipped by him, which albeit were great tips, and I don't blame him. But then Facebook's like, or not Facebook, Twitter's like, "Oh, it's tips like that. No goalie's getting those."
I hadn't really noticed that quite so much, I guess. But,
oh my goodness gracious! Like,
but I think
everybody in Calgary loves him, and I do too. So that's a good thing.
He's selling hope, right?
Yeah.
Which is the only thing. Like this season is almost lost at this point. And now you're seeing the what is it, the slacking for Macklin memes everywhere. Like, like I don't know. Like it sucks being stuck in purgatory for so long. But I mean, we're almost at Christmas now. Like this team is not going anywhere.
Like I don't think this team's making the playoffs. I don't.
No,
and I don't think you do either.
No, I don't at all. I have no reason to believe that.
And I'm all about bringing in youth, and I couldn't be more impressed with Zary and Pospisil. And I'm excited to see how Coronato and when Peltier is when he gets back. I'm assuming he'll come back to the Wranglers for a while. And then
Slovyov is,
Slovyov has been fine. He's had a couple hiccups, but I mean that's expected on the.
He's overskated of the puck a few times, but I think there's still some nerves. He's going to settle in.
But and I'm all about injecting youth, but like. The days of a full rebuild are history. We're not going to tank down and be the worst team in the league. It's not going to happen.
Well, it can happen because we have too many bad contracts.
You're exactly right. We just that can't happen. Yeah. So we're going to have to tweak it on the fly, and we're going to have to maneuver and bring in some players that are good roster players via free agency or whatever it may be. But it's going to have to be, like massaging the roster over the next few years and injecting, hopefully a Hanzik pans out. And,
hopefully,
we need a number 1 center. We need a scorer. I sit and I look at this roster. And I'm like, we have no, and Mark Savard is getting absolutely crucified for his power play. And it's been awful. And
yeah, but has he ever had less to work with?
Well, that's what I'm saying. He needs 2 things. He needs a bigger suit because he looks like he's growing out of his suit, and he needs a scorer.
Yeah.
He doesn't have either. And you can't just go buy a new scorer. And I'm so frustrated too, because it's like, who was the last pure scorer this team had? Johnny Gaudreau. That's it, right? Yep. Probably Johnny Gaudreau.
Yep. Everybody else, I mean, apart from McGinley, were just kind of pieces, some of them really good. Alex Tanguay was a fantastic winger. Christian Uselius, who we have a lot of love for on the show, was a fantastic winger. But then you had guys like kind of miscast and therefore overachieving, like Rene Bourque, Curtis Glencross. Those guys aren't 60-point players anywhere else, I don't think. It's brutal, man. I mean, and that's why you're seeing guys like Zary do so well, because they have some offensive skill. But I mean, to go from where we were a few years ago, so high up in league scoring, like in the 2021-22 season, to this, it's like, man. And I know obviously we lost some phenomenal players, but this is brutal. You really don't expect the Flames to score more than 2 goals in any given night. You really don't.
After the Minnesota game, I don't know why that loss. I knew that night we were not playoff bound. I pulled up playoff odds today. Money Puck has us at 17.8% chance of making the playoffs, and the Athletic has us at a 37% chance of making the playoffs, which I think is really high. I don't know. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that we're at where we're at, but we are. And now I think what we have to look forward to in Calgary is to see what assets we can gain from the UFAs. And I know everybody went into this year saying, oh no, 4 pending UFAs, we're in deep trouble. I look at that as a total blessing right now.
It is. And it's funny because Rasmus Anderson said that, and Eric Francis talked about this, Anderson saying that if anybody in the team's untouchable, it should be Chris Tanev. And it's like, all that is a comment on Tanev's importance to the team, but he's a lot more important as a tradable asset than he could ever be to this roster. Because if this is a playoff caliber team or Stanley Cup contender, he's basically unmovable because you need him. The worst thing this team can do is hang on to him.
I totally agree with Rasmus Anderson in the fact but that's not where we're at right now.
It's not where we're heading.
No.
And I mean, even Anderson's been in the league long enough now that, he's probably getting a little bit tired of the mediocrity and the non-playoff years and all that. But look, man, like,
well, we just got through. We forget a little bit though. We just went through a couple years where we were contenders.
Well, should have been.
I mean, first round exit though we went to the second round. We lost to Edmonton. We were considered a contender that year.
Yeah, and rightfully so.
And that wasn't that long ago.
And Chris Tanev, and I was in Calgary for that playoff series, and Tanev was very badly injured and should not have been playing. We've talked about this, right? And a good friend of Johnny Gaudreau's told me that time too. He's like, Johnny had told him, he was like, Chris Tanev should not be in the lineup. Like, it's that simple.
Yeah.
But again, Anderson's right. He's the kind of, and yeah, he is the kind of guy you want teaching on defenseman. Chris Tanev, deserves a chance to win somewhere else. And I don't know how you can retool this roster on the fly to make it competitive other than play these young guys, hope they develop quickly. And maybe, Huberdeau might have like an Eric Stahl like career resurgence where he gets back to a season or two of maybe 70 points. And it's a terrible contract anyway, slice it, but it'd be nice to get a little bit more out of the guy. And same with Kadri too, offensively. He's never going to touch the numbers he had in Colorado, ever. But he can still be an effective player.
I think he's been really good lately. I love what that is the only line that I'm excited when they hop over the boards, except for our fourth line some nights.
Yeah, because they work well along the boards and they control the puck well down low when they get possession. But other than that, I mean, seeing what we saw from Sharon Govich was exciting. Like I said, about the goal that he scored. And shorthanded, the Flames have been, dangerous.
Yep.
They scored shorthanded goals in each of the last two games, but it's just different, man. Just even strength, they're not dangerous. A power play, they're less dangerous.
I have kind of reserved the fact that, like, I think it's good that we have these UFAs, and I think we need to move them. Like, the only thing I'm worried about now is what's the market value for these guys? Like,
well,
what do we get for a Lindholm? Who's a comparable for a Lindholm? Is Bo Horvat a comparable?
Yeah, I think so. Honestly, I do. The market's still being determined, right? Especially as these injuries pile up elsewhere. So I don't know. I do know that as much as I don't mind the Zadorov got moved when he did, because I thought he made himself a locker room cancer, regardless of how anybody in the team saw him, as soon as he allowed his agent to do that or supported his agent, you're a cancer. You got to go. You got to go.
But it's also helped us as it's given us some cap room, so we could call up Coronato this week.
Well, that's exactly it, and that's the great part about it. But conversely, do I think we could have got more for him closer to the deadline? Absolutely. Yeah. But I don't lament the fact because we got the cap space we needed.
So how big of a risk is it to wait?
I don't think there's any risk at all. I mean, the only risk is you're going to have a few more points in the standings. What are your thoughts on it? Is it a risk to you?
It is with Tanev because I just worry about injury.
Yeah, but that aside, I mean,
Lindholm and Hanifin. I mean, right now Lindholm's got us. I mean, I know we can look back at Lindholm with the last few years and how much we're happy to have him and how well he played for the team. But we can't. I mean, other teams got to be going, geez, what's going on with this guy? What are we giving up for him? Last year, not one team traded their first round pick. We keep saying, well, we're going to get a first round for him. We're going to get a first round for him. I don't know anymore. I don't know.
God forbid if there's one injury to one center on one contending team, his value goes up. Let's say Pittsburgh is in a playoff battle and Malkin gets hurt. Man, Lindholm looks attractive to them all of a sudden, just as a stopgap even, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a rental. So I don't know. We're going to have to see how it shakes out, obviously. I mean, none of these guys, other than maybe Hanifin offensively, are really helping their cases right now. But they're all going to fetch at least a decent return.
I know. I just worry, though, that, like, we're not getting a Sherratt return for Tanev now. I just don't think general managers are paying that.
If we get less for Tanev than what they got for Sherratt, then oof, I don't want to think about it.
I mean,
that's terrifying.
I know. I know. I'm really, really, really interested to see, where that all shakes out.
Well, I mean, how much longer is Conroy going to hang on to these cards, right?
Yeah, I think he's actively talking goaltending. I would think that I think he's holding on to Tanev to get the biggest return at the deadline. I think he's waiting for Lindholm to start producing a little bit. And I think Hannafin talks have been going, but I don't think they're as lucrative as we want them to be, probably. That would be my speculation.
No, probably not. Did you see the comment from Toffoli yesterday post game?
No, I did not.
He did. I didn't hear this in the first place, but apparently there'd been talk that he was offered an 8-year deal to stay in Calgary, and that he asked for an 8-year deal rather.
I had heard that, and it was an 8-year, but it was an expensive one too.
Yeah, he said he never asked for, and there was no discussion about an 8-year deal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting because I mean that just kind of goes to show, and let's assume that he's obviously telling the truth, but there's so much conjecture and BS out there about these types of things, right? Like
the speculation is rampant, right? I mean,
and again,
I don't believe that Hannafin wants to stay here long term. I don't.
No, I don't either.
He's verbalized that, but he's also said the other thing too, that he wants to be here. So
yeah, but I think it's always contingent. The wanting to be in Calgary is like any other market. It's like you want to be a part of a winning team. This isn't a winning team, so you can take that factor right out and say,
yep.
These guys. Not to say they want out like Zadorov stupidly, had said. All he did was hurt his former team in that case, right? He just drove his return value down, and Conroy knew that, which is why he traded him the way he did. Hannafin, I think, is going to fetch a first.
You think so?
I don't see how he doesn't. I mean, and probably a roster player. I wouldn't say any more than that at this point, unless again there's a major injury or he goes on some kind of a tear. But it's funny. I was talking to my boss about this morning. About all these guys getting paid for what they've done in the past. Like look at Huberdeau, and I to this day, and I understand the market pressure to acquire and sign him. But
did you not think? God, I'd rather pay somebody for what they did than hopes and prayers, right? I mean, I looked at some of the signings. I know Rasmus Dahlin in Buffalo is one that comes to mind where it's like, oh, they're definitely paying him for what they think he can be. And I think that's fine as long as it's an educated, like we did with Rasmus Anderson. I think it turned out real well for us.
Oh, that's a great contract. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's a tough market too, because if you keep bridging guys, you lose them to somebody else.
Yep.
But again, the whole idea of acquiring somebody, giving them a massive contract when he's never even pulled on your jersey before, it's like, when has that ever worked out well?
In hindsight, it's so horrible, but when it happened, we were all happy.
Well, but again, and that's the 50-50 side of this, right? You got a marquee name, an all-star player, when you were losing one, and nobody does that. You never see that happen. But conversely, maybe this is one of the good reasons why it never happens. You got to cash your chips in. You get the prospects and the draft picks. Maybe that would have been better. I didn't think so at the time. You didn't. Nobody did.
No, I was happy as hell with it. I keep telling myself that we're still going to be happy with it, but I still watch Huberdeau be so mediocre. It's sickening.
So what's the last hockey trade that worked out for both teams? Because that was a pure hockey trade. And let's not forget, Mackenzie Weegar is a huge part of that, and he's been quite good. What's another hockey trade that worked out?
It worked out for both teams. Would you say the Huberdeau Weegar thing? I still think what we got for Weegar. I don't know. I don't know that we can say it hasn't worked out yet, simply because yes, we're waiting for Huberdeau to wake up, but Weegar's been so good.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, we're still waiting for results.
Yeah. So that's a good question. What Flames trade are you saying?
Well, I'm just thinking in general, honestly. Flames trade. I mean,
I can tell you one. I can tell you one that's not Flames.
What's that?
The Pierre-Luc Dubois Winnipeg deal last year has worked out pleasantly for both teams.
Yeah, Winnipeg's a great team. They're like my backup team now because I have a soft spot for that market. So
Winnipeg is awesome. Yeah. The two guys they got are awesome, and freaking Dubois has been fine in LA, and LA's rocking and rolling.
Yeah, LA's having a great
worked out good for both.
Yeah, that's a good example. I think was it a few years ago at the time? Well, initially the Weber-Subban trade. Although amazingly, the Weber side from Montreal worked out better than Subban did, which is crazy to think about because they got really ripped for that one.
You're going to think I'm a total jerk for saying this. I think PK Subban may be the most overrated player in the last 20 years.
Wow. I don't necessarily disagree. That one playoff run in 13 with Montreal really drove his stock through the roof. But yeah,
he reminds me so much of Dion Phaneuf. It's crazy.
Yeah, lightning in a bottle, in a way. Like, man, I'll never forget those
Good
years.
for a short time, not a long time.
I have a copy of NHL 09 for the Xbox downstairs, just because I have a copy of each. So that one in 2002 that had a Gimlet on it, just because the Flames were on the covers.
Yep.
That first season, 20 goals, 29 assists, and million hits and fights. Like,
he did everything perfectly.
Yeah, although he was a little, well, he was paired with Roman Hamrlik because he wasn't that great defensively. But
so
man, oh man, that was
so
fun.
Did that trade not work out for both teams too?
That was still a huge loss for Calgary because he still had quite a lot of value then, and they did really poorly in that trade. I remember Brian Burke saying when he was with the Leafs, like, the Flames are trying to get into the playoffs, and this trade will help them to do that. Couldn't have been further from the truth. Now, Matt Stajan was a great Flame.
He was a great Flame.
But it was Matt Stajan who didn't score anywhere near like he was hoped to, but he was still a very good player and a great mentor for the younger players like Sean Monahan.
He was a backup.
Yeah. It was Matt Stajan and just a bag of garbage spare parts, like for cars that don't even make anymore. Like Freddie Shostrom, Jamal Mayers, Nicholas Hagman. Like, oh my God. We've reached the funny portion of the show.
Oh, I remember I was shoveling my driveway and my phone buzzed and I looked down and I saw that trade and I just why is it as a sports fan, right? You're just like freaking crazy happy about every trade. And if it's your team, you're like, oh, that's going to be good for us. And
that's actually a great segue. So let me ask you something else. Because I we started this out as I was guesting on your show, and now because you're so proficient at it and have done it, I often feel like I answer all the questions, but now I got more and more for you. So what's the one, regardless of how it turned out, and maybe it's a Huberdeau one, but pick another one that, like a Flames trade that really, really excited you, and then I'll tell you mine.
I don't even remember if it was a trade or a signing.
Well, I can probably tell you. I'm good with that stuff.
The Owen Nolan. I was so excited for Owen Nolan. What was I thinking?
That was a signing. And that was funny because Robert Regeer roughed him up when he was with the Leafs, and they hated each other. And then Regeer had him over for dinner when they became teammates, and they smoothed it all over.
I was excited for Owen Nolan.
But you know what? Owen Nolan, in the series against the Sharks in 2008, he scored, I think, the winning goal in Game 3. The goal, actually, it was the game where Sarich destroyed Patrick Marleau. Yeah. And the Flames came back and won from a 3-0 deficit in the playoffs. Owen Nolan, I remember, it's a pass from Tanguy, skated to the top of the circle and just took like a half clapper from the top of the circle and roofed it.
Speaking of old Sharks playoffs, we're gonna rewind on you here a little bit. I don't even know if you're gonna remember this. I don't know. I think it was 95. Flames in the playoffs against the Sharks.
Yeah.
First round. We're up 3-0. And I was like 21 at the time.
Yeah.
And I had
7.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kyle. And back then, like, you couldn't just turn on the TV and watch, even in the playoffs, I couldn't turn on the TV and watch Calgary play. I had to go somewhere. And at that age, I didn't have the money to have the center ice package, which had just started. I believe it was in its infancy then.
Yeah.
So I had to drive to this Mexican restaurant bar. It was the only place in my area that had the NHL games. And it was Game 7. Calgary had lost Game 4, 5, and 6 in overtime. Remember this?
Yeah.
Game 7.
More so like in a highlight, like years later thing, but yeah,
Game 7. I'm watching this game. The bars closed down here at 1:00 in the morning. Back then, they're closing down, man. They're going to kick me out. We're in overtime. Overtime game 7. We had lost 3 straight overtime games. And I told the lady behind the bar, I said, you're going to have to call the cops because I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
They shut all the lights off, and I sat in there with my girlfriend at the time and watched the Flames lose 4 consecutive overtime games to the San Jose Sharks. It's traumatized me still to this day.
They lost in double overtime. So I looked up the series while you were talking about it. So this is the most Flame stat ever.
Who scored those? Do you know who scored that goal? Because I don't remember.
Game. Man, I got smoked in that one too. So May 19th, Trevor Kidd was our goaltender.
Did I remember that?
Oh,
4 in a row in overtime.
Ray Whitney had the series winner. Go figure.
Yeah.
Longtime NHL player. So the series actually went. Game 1 was 5-4 San Jose.
Oh, really?
Game
Okay.
Two was 5-4 San Jose. Game 3 was 9-2 Calgary. Game 4, 6-4 Calgary. So it's tied series. Then the Flames lose 5-0, 5-3, and then 5-4 in double overtime.
Okay,
but
so I must be thinking of the Vancouver one.
Yeah, but this is a really, really flamesy stat for you. I didn't know this, actually. So this is the first playoff meeting between these two teams. Note also Calgary did lose in 7 games to San Jose in the Owen Nolan 2008 series we talked about.
Yeah.
Calgary set an NHL record by scoring 35 goals, the most by any team in a 7-game series. The 35 goals is also the highest number of goals ever scored by a team that lost a series in NHL history.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that 61 goals in that series is the most ever between two teams in an NHL playoff series.
Who was in goal for San Jose? Kelly Rudy?
Probably. Just a second.
I don't know why I just thought of that. I think it was Kelly Rudy.
Oh no way.
No, Arthur Zerbe?
Yeah, Artis Urbe backed up by Wade Flaherty.
Oh yeah. I think he played for the old Brandon Wheat Kings.
Yeah, and he played for the Islanders along with like a ton of other goalies.
Yeah, for every team in the Western and Eastern Conference.
Yeah, the Mike Sillinger of goaltenders. So the move I was thinking of, and this one was a trade, and I might have mentioned this before, but the one that I was like, oh my god, we're going to win a Stanley Cup was the Ole Jokinen trade. I was so excited.
That, didn't you?
In the first game when they played Philly and beat them like 7-1. Oh man, it was Jokinen, Camilleri, and Iginla. Like, oh, that was fun. Then they lost to Chicago in the first round, 2009.
Now my crappy story where I was wrong on the overtimes got me thinking. I bet it's the Vancouver one where we lost in overtime. The Pavel Bure scoring on Mike. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah.
Gosh, but I remember that San Jose series, and I remember Game 7 being at the bar, and I'm like, I stayed in there in the dark by myself, and my girlfriend mentioned that game. But
yeah. Oh,
I
man.
needed a drink big time on that one.
It's amazing they didn't win a single playoff series in the time they won the Cup till 2004. And
That
then from
brings
2004 to 2015 was another 11 years until they won a series. And then 7 years until they did it again.
Gosh.
Wow.
Sad.
You know, this got fun and uplifting for about 5 minutes. And then we started stat chasing, and now it's like, oh, why'd we do that?
Now I need a drink. Speaking of drinks, I saw this prior to the Carolina game, and that Minnesota game was tough on me, and evidently was tough on this person too. This is the X factor of the week from Backlund for captain. How many bottles of wine do I need to buy tonight to get through the Flames game? And the Carolina, that's how I felt prior to the Carolina game, because I had bad feelings also. And I was
I played that night and got home when they were down 2-0. I'm like, and then I'll do this thing where I get all pissy and I'll shut it off for 5 minutes, turn back on. I'm like, oh my god, they're back in the game, or whatever it was. But
I saw that. We need that.
That's a great tweet. I always have an abundance of alcohol in my house, and I would say it's either for guests or when the Flames are playing.
Oh, it's going to be one of those years. And, as much as there's hope, and I'm hopeful too, I'm super happy. Actually, things could be way worse. I mean, Zari could be struggling. Pospisil could have been sent back down. I mean, those are realistic things that could have happened. And, we have hope. Wolf's been playing fairly well. Zari's been good. Let's see what happens with Coronato.
The narrative is changing, like Conroy had said.
It is.
Because what they did, and the Tony Amanis, the Owen Nolans of the the years gone by, this patchwork, like the Roman Cervenka experiment, pinning Mark Jankowski as the next Joe Nieuwendyk. Like, there's been so much crappy narrative and so many, not necessarily poor decisions, but decisions where the team failed miserably to pivot from that type of decision making.
Yeah,
like hanging on to Jerome McGinley well past his prime, which I get, that one's tough, but like, the team is playing a lot of young players, and they're their best players this season. That's not a coincidence.
And that gives us the hope that we need to keep being excited to watch. It is. It is. It's crazy. I get so frustrated during these Flames games. And then 2 days later, when they're set to play that night, I'm excited again to watch them. And that's maybe psychotic of myself, but I guess that's what fans do, right?
That makes you a true fan, though. Like, you got to go through the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs, but at least the team's doing what it needs to do to better itself in the long term. Now, it is tricky to think of going to Calgary, because anytime I've ever gone, the team's been in a playoff spot. I've watched them in the playoffs or fighting for a playoff spot. This trip in March, I don't think it's going to have a whole lot to do with the Flames being a competitive team so much as it's a chance to see the young guys play and to honor one of the greatest Flames of all time, Mika Kiprusoff. And that's a perspective that I need to take to Calgary, because I'm going there to see a winning team that's going to be playoff bound. I think I'm going to be disappointed. And I hate to say that because, it's still early. And again, remember the COVID break, 21-22, and the Flames just went on a fucking tear afterwards.
Yep.
Christmas break, maybe they come back and they're one of the best teams in the second half of the season, because they do have a tendency to play better against better opponents, and they have a really tough schedule. However, it's not particularly likely. There's no signs of that happening at this point. And it's going to be what it's going to be, but at least the team is changing their narrative of the last 30 years.
That is the hope, and that some of our young players are playing pretty well, and so that gives us hope. And the road gets tougher.
So, where you're going to be in beautiful Florida, are you going to take like a proper full-on vacation from everything? Are you going to watch games?
I'm watching games. I look at it this way: I land.
Don't let them ruin your vacation.
No, I'm not. I'm past the anger part, right? So, like, I'll watch them.
Telling me about my last breakup. No, I'm still angry sometimes.
I probably won't get to see a lot. Okay, let's roll through the schedule. So Monday, tomorrow night, they're
in Colorado.
Calgary's in Colorado. Then they're in Vegas on Tuesday night, which is a hellacious trip right here. They hit 3 road games in a row, 3 time zones, 3 and 4 nights. Like, that's just brutal. Yeah. And then Thursday, they're in Minnesota. Well, that's a day I'll be in Florida. I probably won't see that game, but we'll watch it later in that night when I go to bed. Saturday night's game will be late night. Tampa comes to Calgary. I'll watch that. Monday, Florida comes to Calgary. I'll watch that one. And then we'll be home in time to watch Calgary go to Anaheim. So, I know I'm going to be watching these games.
And that happens often, Florida and Tampa passing through the same city.
Not usually back to back, I don't believe.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, so it's a bit of a murderer's row of opponents. But to your point, like, at least you'll have the solace of a vacation to numb your pain if they continue their losing ways. I shouldn't even say losing ways, but they're so mediocre. Like, let's get close to 500, win 1, lose 2, win 1, lose 2, or go 1-1-1. It's like, guys, like, we need like a 6-7 game win streak, and it's just not in the cards.
I got a book for my birthday I'm going to read when I'm traveling. Draft day.
I heard that's really good.
So I've got that. I've got what I need to get me through a vacation. I got my iPad coming with me. So I'll be watching.
You ever read Patrick O'Sullivan's book?
I have not.
Breaking Away. It's fucked up. His dad tortured him.
Wasn't Patrick O'Sullivan one of the guys that used to be on Sirius NHL radio? Couldn't stand.
Yeah, he would have been. He was also a former Edmonton Oiler and a standout for the American World Junior teams. LA King as well.
Yep. I remember him.
Yeah, it's a tragic story of a parent that pushed her kid way too hard, did some absolutely unforgivable things. Anyway, interesting.
Sadly, you're seeing that a whole lot more, don't you?
Yeah, it's a messed up world, man. It's a real messed up world.
Well, let's jet on out of here.
You're jetting on out of here, so you have fun in Florida. We'll be in touch, of course. I'll hold down the socials fort on behalf.
You do that.
Podcast.
You hold down the socials, and I'll get some rest and relaxation. Come back ready to talk. We'll have a lot of stuff to talk about upon return.
Yeah, well, it's going to be the Christmas edition of the show, so let's have a festive drink and maybe
we'll do that.
Christmas graphics and
I'll design some Christmas graphics.
Yeah, we'll maybe throw it out to the Twitterverse to ask some questions or something they want us to talk about. Or
let's do it.
Yeah. Cool.
Let's do it. We'll be back right before Christmas. Flames fans, enjoy your break from us for a little bit and enjoy all the games that lie ahead.
Thanks for listening to Flames Unfiltered with Brad Burud and Kyle Lewis, your source for unfiltered Calgary Flames hockey talk. Keep it locked on flamesunfiltered.ca. Subscribe where you get all your podcasts to never miss an episode. Flames hockey talk every week, presented by Inside Edge Hockey Media Group.